Blog Talk Radio.
Stone Guardian, Crystal Keeper, Gem Lovers of Rocktown, welcome to There's a Rock for That! Welcome to There's a Rock for That. I am your host, Mary Brown, coming to you live from Amarillo, Texas. It is a beautiful Saturday, the most beautiful Saturday in 4 years. I'm just joking for my half of the audience that doesn't agree. But anyways, wow. What a day. And I'm so excited about today anyway, regardless of anything else going on in the world, because we're going to be talking about crystals, as we often do on this show every month. And this is a live call-in show. If you would like to get a mini reading or talk about crystals or ask a question about our topic today, you can do that quite easily by calling in to the number 714-816-4628. That number again is 714-816-4628. And remember to press the number 1 on your dial pad, because that raises your hand and lets me know that you want to be on the air. And also you can ask questions and participate in the show by following along on our chat post that's posted in our Psychic Talk Radio Facebook group. Find that easily by going to psychictalk.net/chat. You can ask a question in the comments thread there. I will be keeping an eye on it to see if anybody has any questions. I am really excited about our topic today, and it's a really, kind of basic topic for people that are into crystals, and that is cleansing and charging our crystals. What does it mean? How do you do it? Is it necessary? What's involved? We're going to be getting into that. And our crystal guest of the month is Topaz. And I'm really excited to talk about Topaz as well. For all you November babies out there like me, it is our assigned birthstone on most charts. And if you're like me, you have a weird relationship with your birthstone. It's like, really? Is this really supposed to be for me? But we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is this idea of cleansing and charging your crystals. It's kind of funny. I feel like I've talked about it a lot over the years, even, way back when on this show in its earliest incarnation. But it's a topic that comes up over and over again. I get a lot of wonderful messages and emails from fellow crystal keepers that ask about this. And then sometimes I get messages from friends that are just getting into crystals, and they get a crystal, like a wonderful woman I know sent me a message. She was so excited. She got her first piece of selenite. And she's like, I've been soaking it in salt water for 2 days. Is that long enough? And I'm like, don't put it in water. It's soluble. So then I realized, okay, let's just talk about this again. So what does it mean to cleanse them, and what does that do for our crystals? Well, and we talk about this idea of charging the energy of the crystal as well. And I'm going to say this, I don't know how many other, crystal aficionados out there say it or agree with me, or I haven't seen anybody else say it, but this may be just my own particular opinion on it and belief about it, is that if you're cleansing your crystals, you really don't need to be charging your crystals. okay, because cleansing re-energizes your crystals, and that's the whole purpose of charging them, okay? But, there are things on the market like charging plates, and you can get like a generator, crystal generator quartz, or even a geo that you could use, ideally to charge the crystal, but it really isn't necessary if you're cleansing them. So, okay, we talked about charging. I feel like that gets that part of the topic out of the way for me, and now I want to get into cleansing, because that gets a little more complicated. I'm going to say the number one important thing about cleansing your crystals is your intention. So you set the intention. You believe that what you're doing is actually going to cleanse the crystal, okay? And you can do simple things like, turning on the tap and, having the crystal charging under running, or cleansing it with running water. That's fine for some crystals, but not all of them. And why is that? Why do we have to take care of different crystals in different ways? Well, let me tell you, there are many crystals out there that are pretty fragile, or what we call friable, crystals that are layered or clustered and can separate. Crystals such as selenite are water soluble. Polished surface, if you have polished stones or natural points, those can be easily scratched. They can be easily damaged. Nothing like dropping a crystal point on a concrete floor and watching that done that more than I care to admit. So things like tumbled stones are a little more durable. And, the reason that they are is because, we're talking about endless hours of tumbling, turning in fine grit to give them that sort of tougher surface. And you can keep tumbled stones together in a big bag with other, but, stones that have points on them, carved stones that are, delicate, fragile stones, you don't want to just stick them in a bag with the tumbled stones, because they'll probably break off a little bit. So, what are some basic ways to take care of your crystals anyways before we get into cleansing? Some people like to keep them wrapped in silk or a velvet scarf to prevent scratching and kind of protect the crystal from absorbing, foreign, meaning not from another country, but, the dust, dirt, things that might accumulate on your crystals. But I like to display my crystals, so, you just kind of take a look at them, make sure that there's no dust and dirt accumulating, gently, wipe it off. Feather dusters are great for crystal cleaning. I love using a feather duster. But, a lot of this is about, because the idea of cleansing crystals, it's really there's two parts of that. One, we're talking about the physical cleansing of a crystal because of the way that we want to keep the look of it and everything. So you want to keep it dirt-free and all of that. You want to make sure, that you don't have it breaking up because of being banged around with other crystals, that kind of stuff. But often when we're talking about cleansing our crystals, it's the other part of it. We're talking about energetically cleansing them. And if you cleanse them energetically, then you do not need to be charging them because you're re-energizing them anyway. So when people talk about cleansing crystals, we hear the old salt water thing. And like I said, that's not good for selenite. That's not good for your water-soluble crystals. You don't have to use salt water. Something as simple as placing the crystal in the light of the sun or even the moon for a few hours can recharge its batteries and cleanse its energy. But you also, in using the natural elements like the sun, you want to make sure it's not a crystal that's going to fade easily in sunlight. And you've got to be careful not to focus the rays where they can start a fire. Because remember, just the light from the sun, moves in an arc as the day progresses. So you just want to make sure that you're not going to start a fire with your quartz crystal being in the sunlight. So there's, these are easy methods to cleanse your crystals, but, you have to pay attention. You have to pay attention to what's going on. I've actually seen people send me pictures of small fires that started because they had their crystals out in the sun. So you don't want to do that either, right? You can use salt. You can use sea salt. You can use rock salt. You can leave even delicate crystals in sea salt or rock salt. Leave it overnight, usually as brush off all the salt afterwards. Because if you leave anything in salt for too long, it can damage it, especially, if the atmosphere you're living in is a bit damp. And there's certain crystals, too, this is a really easy way to do it, that have the ability to cleanse other crystals. Yes, so carnelian, very easy to get a piece of carnelian, widely available, inexpensive. You can keep a carnelian in a bag of your tumbled stones, and you're not going to need to cleanse them using any other method, You could, again, like I said, clear quartz clusters or geodes. You can put a small crystal on that and leave that overnight to cleanse that crystal. You can smudge crystals or pass them through incense, or even pass them through the light of a candle. You can also just visualize your crystals surrounded by light, which purifies and energizes them. So and there's even like crystal cleansers on the market, these little spray bottles of essential oils, really light sprays, even okay for something like selenite that's water soluble. You don't want to make it wet, but you can. So all these different methods for cleansing crystals, again, that's why I say your intention is the most important, because there's a lot of different ways you can use. And especially if you're using visualization, you want to make sure you've got the clear intention to cleanse your crystals, to charge your crystals. Whatever your approach is, I think any approach to this is always going to be more effective if you believe in what you're doing. If you don't believe in what you're doing, if you don't think it's going to work, then chances are it's not going to work, right? Anytime that we, try to do something sort of half-heartedly, we greatly diminish our chances of effectiveness. Okay, so I hope that sort of covers this idea of cleansing the crystals. The big takeaway should be that there's not one right way to do it. It's what feels right to you, So keep that in mind. Don't fret. Don't sweat it. So automatically, no matter what it is, you have to stick it in sea salt water, okay? Because, no, you don't need to do that, and you want to make sure you're not going to damage your stones by using that method on the wrong type of stone. Like cellulite. I wonder if there is a stone named cellulite, right? But no, selenite. Other stones, obviously, like halite or salt crystals are something that you don't want to put in salt water or put in any water, actually, because they will dissolve. And the interesting thing that I will say, after we've talked all about this cleansing of crystals, a lot of people like to use crystals to cleanse themselves. So they'll use like a halite or salt crystal, those pretty like sort of pinkish, orangish salt lamps that you see that's made out of halite. And, yeah, it is salt crystal. But a lot of people like to put those in their bath to kind of cleanse their own aura and their own energy. And so if there's a stone you're using for that purpose, then of course it's okay to use it. And of course it's okay to put it in the water, because you're not necessarily trying to preserve the look of the crystal or preserve the crystal. You're trying to use it as a tool to cleanse your own energy, and you can always replace it with another piece of rock salt crystal. Okay, so that is pretty much all I really have to say about crystal cleansing. If anybody has any questions or comments about it, or wants to know more, or you're using a method that you don't have confidence in, or you want to try it a different way, then, feel free to leave a comment on our chat post, psychictalk.net/chat on Facebook. Or, call into the show and ask your question as well. We would love that too. All right. So now we're going to talk about, this is very exciting for me, our crystal of the month. But before we do that, every day on the Psychic Talk Radio Facebook group, I post a card of the day. And if you haven't joined that yet, you want to join it, you can find it easily on Facebook. Just search for Psychic Talk Radio. We have a page in the group, like the page, and join the group, join the conversation. And you can also find it by going to psychictalk.net/Facebook. But our card of the day comes from Madame Endora's Fortune Cards by Christine Philippak. And the card that came up today for all of us is the stars. And the message is, a long journey brings rewards. So to me, the meaning of that is to not give up. Sometimes we feel like we're trying, and we've been trying for a long time. And whether that's with our career, or with a special project that we want to complete, or even with our love life, we can feel like it's such a long journey. It's such a long road, and where does it get us? And this card tells us that it's going to bring rewards. Stars in general, this is in the tarot deck, but it does, it did bring to mind the star card in the tarot, which to me is so often a message of hope. And often, telling us that, the blessings are just ahead of us. So please keep that in mind. Don't give up hope. Don't quit, okay? Because there's a reward at the end of this long journey for you. Okay, and again, you can see that card of the day and every day by joining our Psychic Talk Radio Facebook group. And you also want to make sure you join our Tarot Guild Facebook group as well. Most of our shows are brought to you by the Tarot Guild, and you can find the Tarot Guild easily by going to the Tarot Guild on Facebook, or by joining our Tarot Guild website. So look that up, thetarotguild.com. Okay, so let's go ahead and start talking about Topaz. And, just a shout out if you're wondering, how to call in to get on the air for a mini reading, or to talk about crystals or cleansing crystals, or even talk about Topaz. Again, let me give out that number real quick. It is 714-816-4628. And you can let me know that you're on to get a mini reading or be on the air by pressing 1 on your dial pad. That raises your hand. Okay, so Topaz. What's funny is I was looking through the archives of all the shows I've done, every featured stone that we've had, every, crystal of the month or crystal of the week, and I don't think I have ever talked about Topaz. And it's kind of funny because it's my birthstone. And, in preparing for the show to talk about Topaz today, one thing I like to do is also, I have several, I would say, like 4 or 5 different crystal oracle card decks. And I like to look through them to see, what's the message that they connected to the stone? What is the thing? And what is so funny is that I kept going through deck after deck today, and none of them had a Topaz card. I thought that is so strange, especially since it is a birthstone. It's a well-known stone. It's a historic stone. But none of them had a none of them had a topaz card except for the Liquid Crystal Oracle by, oh my goodness, that was a deck that came out a few years ago from Blue Angel Publishing by Justin Mokihar Asar, and he had a Imperial Topaz card. So I thought, okay, that's kind of close, but I just thought it was so strange that like neither the Crystal Reading cards nor the Crystal Spirit cards or the Eternal Crystal card, like none of them had a Topaz card, but a lot of them had the same cards in them, deck after deck, featured like the same cards, and some of them like unusual stones too, but no Topaz. So I thought, okay, great. We'll talk about topaz. If you look at the image for today's show on all of our promotion and stuff, you see all these beautiful different colored topazes. Topaz comes in such variety. There's green topaz, almost transparent topaz, blue topaz, reddish pink, I would say topaz, clear topaz, brown topaz. There's so much variety in it. And so, a lot of us, are wondering about, like, well, what is topaz good for? We may know that it's the birthstone for November. But, what does that really do for us, right? What is it good for? And according to my favorite crystal expert, Judy Hall, the amazing Judy Hall, topaz is really great for a lot of things, She describes it as an empathetic stone that directs energy to where it is needed most. And it soothes, heals, stimulates, recharges, remotivates, and aligns the meridians of the body. Topaz promotes truth and forgiveness. It helps shed light on the path, highlights goals, and taps into inner resources. And it's about enabling you to trust in the universe, And it's kind of funny because I feel like all of these attributes are so needed right now for so many of us all over the world. We need to have that sense of being able to trust again. And Topaz is excellent for cleansing the aura and for helping you to relax. There's a lot of, it's connected to being able to help with digestion and combating anorexia and even restoring your sense of taste and fortifying the nerves and stimulating metabolism. And St. Hildegard of Bingen recommended an elixir of topaz to correct dimness of vision or bad vision. According to Judy Hall, the great place to position your topaz to work with it is, putting it on your ring finger, your solar plexus, your brow chakra, whatever it's appropriate for what you're trying to achieve through it. And of course, like most stones that come in a variety of colors, you want to pay attention to the color that you're using. So if you choose those beautiful, brilliant blue topazes to work with, you probably want to work on the throat chakra or the third eye chakra. And it's also, those are great for meditation. Clear topaz you can use on the crown chakra. You can use it anywhere, really. And on, relating the color of the stone that you're using with the color associated with the different chakra centers on the body. So these ideas, when we talk about crystal healing, and we talk about all of these, physical things that they can be helpful for, or even energetic things that they can be helpful for, like cleansing our aura, helping us relax, helping and aiding in our spiritual development, all of those sort of things. I always like to kind of keep a foot in this age and time that we live in, but I also like to look to the past historically, because often those ideas that we have today where somebody easily rattles off like, oh, it's great for cleansing your aura. Oh, it's great for digestion, that kind of stuff. Where did it come from? And I think often only by looking back through history is how we discover where these things came from. So, first of all, the name of Topaz, right? We're not exactly sure where that originated from, but there's two possible sources, and they're very old. The first one was Pliny the Elder. And according to Pliny, the name comes from Topazios, an island in the Red Sea, which was the location of ancient peridot mines. And the island's name is from Topazios, is from the Greek word meaning to guess, since the island was often shrouded in fog. And the other source that they think the name Topaz came from is from the Sanskrit word topaz, meaning fire. And that you might think like, well, how does that relate to the stone? And it does, because the reference to fire actually is pretty appropriate, because many early writers were only familiar with yellow to orange colored topaz, so it looked fiery to them. The early texts mention yellow-green topaz, which may have been actually a confusion with peridot, because we don't really see those today. It is known that the stones served in ancient times as an amulet to ward off the evil eye. And it's kind of funny, if you listen to this show and we like to go back through the history and stuff, it's amazing how many stones were used to ward off the evil eye. Like, that was a problem back in the day, like big time. They had so many solutions for that. And, topaz was tied to the left arm to protect a person from any curse, as well as to guard against liver trouble. Pope Clement the Sixth and Pope Gregory II both owned topazes, and the stone was used to touch the plague sores and supposedly cured people of the plague by doing that. Again, we're looking back at the ancient writings. We're not able to verify if it actually worked to do that. We're just hearing from the sources that it did, and it's kind of surprising, right? Owned by two different popes. It really added, I think, in the minds of most people gave power to this idea that it could cure you, or that it could help you if you had contracted the plague. But, I like to look at these things, and then I like to also keep in mind, we only have what we have out of the sources. We don't have an eyewitness to it. We don't have somebody sitting there saying, like, yes, this, I got it on camera. It worked, right? But, regardless of that, it's got such a rich, beautiful history to it. Let's talk about the physicality of the stone a little bit first, and then we'll get a little more into the history. Like I said, it comes in all these beautiful colors. On the Mohs scale, it's a hardness of 8. It has perfect cleavage. You might see it with streaks of white. It's just gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. It can be transparent. Sometimes there might be a little bit of fluorescence with your topaz, but they can generally be pretty weak and not very useful fluorescence with that. It's not like something like labradorite. And it forms late in the crystallization of rocks. It may reach enormous size. You might see gigantic examples of topazes in museums. Crystals of topaz, can reach a foot in length. 100-pound crystal had been found in the mines of Brazil. Can you imagine finding 100-pound topaz? That would be amazing. And, what's the crystal system? Orthorhombic, prisms with multifaceted ends, often 8-sided in cross-section. That's why it just makes such beautiful, brilliant-looking cut stones for jewelry. If you've ever looked at, topaz pendants or topaz rings, they just really can be so eye-catching. And again, I'm a fan of the blue one. Throughout the ages, not all the way back to the Greeks and Romans. Yeah, sure, but throughout time, topaz has been a popular stone. We have so many writers from different periods of time, like the 11th century Bishop of Reims. He wrote a poem and listed 2 different attributes to topaz. And I quote, its yielding nature to the file gives way, yet bids the bubbling cauldron cease to play. One only virtue nature grants the stones, those to relieve those who under hemorrhoids groan. So, when do you ever hear the word hemorrhoids in a poem? Well, I guess in the 11th century, that was something that maybe wasn't, eyebrow raising like it might be today. But again, so often, these ancient writers, 11th century seems pretty ancient to me even, it kind of, they're associating these different cures with stones when they wrote about. That wasn't odd for people to hear back then. It wasn't odd to hear in the Middle Ages. It wasn't odd to hear throughout time. One strange thing that's kind of interesting that I discovered that people used to believe about topaz, nobody really talks about it today. I haven't tried it. Maybe somebody could, though, is that topaz was thought to have the ability to cool boiling water. And that's really kind of a fascinating thing. And even early Christian lore gives topaz credit for curing eye troubles, like we heard from Helen of Bingen. And all of that's kind of based on the 10th century scholar Andreas, Bishop of Caesarea, who was one of the earliest writers to associate the foundation stones of Revelation with the 12 apostles. Okay, so for people that are like Christian or into that, and about the foundation stones that in Revelation, topaz was one that this bishop associated, because he was the first one to associate the stones with the 12 apostles. He associated it with the apostle Matthew, which is pretty fascinating. And Harriet Forbes, another writer, wrote a book and claimed that St. Matthew himself was cured of eye diseases by using topaz. And so as the centuries go by, more and more virtues and cures become associated with topaz. St. Hildegard claimed that the stone emitted so brilliant a light that prayers could be read in the dark additional light. So she used topaz as a flashlight way back in the day. And again, this is connected to this idea of curing vision problems, and she also, she actually described her treatment for this. And she said it consisted of placing the topaz in wine for 3 days and 3 nights, rubbing the eye with the stone before going to sleep so the liquid just touches the eye, and then using the wine as an eye wash for 5 days. So, before modern medicine, people really tried some wild stuff using stones, using herbs, using wine, using what they had available to them. Now, obviously, if we have eye problems today, we do have modern medicine, which is great in many, many ways, and we can go to the eye doctor, the Triswetter, the ones that measure your eyes and give you a prescription for glasses, I think. But we can go and get our eyes checked out and everything. So I'm not advocating that anybody put their topaz in wine and then wash their eyes with that wine, which essentially they were making what we call an elixir, right? But I do find it fascinating, and again, going through the centuries, so that's like the 11th century, and we go up to the 14th century, and you have more attributes added to topaz in the 14th century by Mandeville, who was a famous lapidary of Chevalier Jean de Mandeville. And what he had to say about topaz was this idea that it cools things off. It can cure what they call gall and spreading much if you have it. Topaz will also check one's anger and lessen lechery. So if you have a friend who's angry all the time and a bit lecherous, a topaz might be a wonderful gift for them. But it just, again, all these things keep adding to it. So maybe, Mandeville adding that idea that it put anger in check and made people like kind of calm down basically. Maybe that leads us up to today where now we look at it as a stone that can relax us, So because I do think these meanings that we have today in the modern world, so many of them are based on the historical meanings of the stones, and that's something that I've always found incredibly fascinating. And then there's all these other weird applications for the stone, like topaz was said to become invisible if it made contact with any sort of poison. They would powder topaz and place it in wine and claim that it acts for a cure for asthma, insomnia, burns, hemorrhages, and as an amulet, just to drive away the evil eye, but also to drive away sadness and strengthen the intellect and grant courage. All of these powers were said to increase and decrease with the phases of the moon and be even more powerful if used in moonlight. So all of these things are really kind of fascinating. In the 13th century Book of Wings by author Rabbi Ragiel, he stated that the figure of a falcon on a topaz helps to acquire the goodwill of kings. And topaz was also considered precious by African bushmen. It was used in ceremonies for healing and contacting spirits. And you even have a 13th century Hindu physician, Naharare, and he stated that topaz is an appetizer of excellence. It tastes sour and is cold. It is a remedy for flatulence. So we've got flatulence, we've got hemorrhoids. Topaz has really got an interesting history to it, doesn't it? And again, through different centuries where the plague was a thing, we have this idea of it being connected to, help cure people of plague, helping to heal wounds and skin eruptions and all of these amazing things. So topaz, what an amazing stone it is. Now, I did, mention that it is a birth month for November, a birthstone for November. But, look, if you've listened enough to the show, you know kind of how I feel about, official list of birthstones. I just feel truly that this is an invention for the most part of the jewelry industry to sell jewelry. They have a great gemstone to sell us every month of the year. But that being said, no, you don't have to be born in November to really resonate with Topaz or to benefit from using it at all. You don't have to worry. I fully advocate the idea of choosing our own birthstones. Choose the one that you want to represent the birth of you into the world. Okay. Well, we are we're a little bit past the bottom of the hour, so it is a great time for me to let you know what we have coming up on the Psychic Talk Radio Network this week. Okay, and show on the network is going to be tomorrow, November 8th, The Magic Universe, with our host, Sharona Rapsick. And she's going to be doing open lines, angel Reiki, and free tarot readings all show long. And that's going to kick off at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. That will be followed on Monday, November 9th, by The Wisdom of the Soul Show with your host, Janice Fuchs. Again, 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. And then on Wednesday, the Compassionate Light Healing and Guidance Hour with our host, Catherine Hahn. Her topic is really interesting, and it is You Are Created in the Image of the Divine. So that should be really interesting talk on Wednesday with Catherine. Again, all our shows are at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Friday, the Doctors Are In show with host Dr. Rose Wilkerson, and Dr. Dax Carlisle is going to be talking about following the flow of abundance. Exciting. We all want to follow the flow of abundance. We want the abundance flowing to us for the most part, right? Maybe they'll tell us how to do that. And then I'll be back next Saturday, November 14th, on the Tarot Today radio show with my co-host, Dex Carlisle. And we're really excited about that. We're going to have a special guest on, Mark Adam Baum, the Star Trek Tarot creator, is going to be talking all about the Star Trek Tarot, and I can't wait for that. So those are our upcoming shows on Psychic Talk Radio. You can find that list of shows by going to psychictalk.net/upcoming. Okay. And let me just check our chat room here and see if anything going on, anything happening. Where was it? I just had the chat post and then I scrolled too far. All right. Okay. Everything's good in there. Sorry, I have too many tabs open. I'm going to close this tab, open that tab up. All right. So, it's interesting. We have a lot of people listening into the show. We don't have anybody raising their hand. So remember, the number to call in is 714-816-4628. Press 1 on the dial pad to raise your hand if you want to ask a question or be on the air. And again, you can ask questions by going to our chat post. It's so funny. I've got like a million notifications on here, and I find it. Yeah, okay, we're good on that. Okay, so I thought this would be fun because, one, I wasn't really expecting. Today, if you turn on your television, you'll notice it seems like all of America is out in the street dancing, jumping up and down, which is pretty exciting. And then, but at the same time, we still have this pandemic going on, so I hope, people sort of spread out a little bit, make sure you socially distance, all of that. But what I had planned to do, if we didn't get too many calls, is to go ahead and do a reading for all of us today, because I do think that it is an incredibly momentous occasion to have a changing of the guard announced, let's say, and I thought, it would be really fun to say, like, okay, we've been through so much already. This has been the longest week ever for many people. It just felt like it dragged on and on and on. So what's some advice for the weekend? How do we deal with this? Because often when there's so much anticipation or expectation, you're going to have people that, are kind of like, okay, well, what now? What now? So what's some advice on what we could be working on this weekend to help us, like, through the weekend? Okay? Because I do feel like this is it's a very emotional time for everyone. So I'm going to just use my crystal dice here and see what comes up. What comes up as advice for all of us. And, it's funny because when I roll these dice, I often look at, like, the numbers that are the most prominent, right? And what I have here is 2 4s that come up and it's really interesting. Both of these 4s, because of crystals that they come up on, rose quartz and red jasper, the 4s to me talk about stability. They talk about that sense of, like, okay, what is going to be the areas that we need to work on? Well, the red jasper to me often is speaking to our sense of security, our sense of stability, our sort of sense of grounding and being down to earth and realism and focus. And I feel like having these 4s come up, I feel like it's a positive sign for us, saying, like, guess what? Even if you didn't get the result that you wanted, the rug hasn't been pulled out from underneath you. Don't believe that it has at all. Life is a journey, right? That's original. But, it's full of ups and downs. It's full of disappointments and everything, but that doesn't mean that we have to be thrown off our balance every time, something comes as a surprise to us, or something disappoints us in some way, or we just feel like, oh, no, everything's changing, Because if nothing else, this is a week that signifies that, things are changing. And so stability is really important. Stability in our hearts, Because remember, no matter who gets elected, no matter what happens in, exterior world, right? No matter what happens out there, in your heart of hearts, you're still you. I'm still me. The sun's still shining. Those are things to remember, that we do have stability. And with the red jasper, especially, it's also saying, like, no, you are rock solid, literally, no pun intended. And rose quartz, it's hard to look at rose quartz and not feel the love, think of the love, Rose quartz is a great one to be working with this weekend. It helps calm us. It helps, kind of reduce the aggravation or aggression that we can even feel sometimes. It increases our feelings and sense of self-worth. It's great for releasing trauma as well. Red jasper is another great one to work with. Again, the grounding of it, the idea of, like, being able to focus on things that matter and not waste our time or effort on things that don't. It's a stone very much connected to being able to stay honest and stay open. Honesty is a value coming back in now. And the biggest thing with that to me is that idea of, like, being honest with ourselves. When we're honest with ourselves, we can be our authentic self. Okay. And, it's a great virtue. Now, looking at all the stones that come up, I can say this, that there is one stone. I did get a 5, and I do think of 5s as challenges, conflicts, problem areas when they come up in my crystal readings like this. And the stone that came up as a 5 is a clear quartz. Now, quartz has got a lot of different attributes. I think we've talked about it before on the show. It's wonderful. It's great for restoring balance. It's great for clarity and understanding. And they're famous for being programmable, right? So with that crystal quartz coming up as a 5, I think that idea of the programmability of clear quartz is something to really think about. If you have clear quartz, most of us have clear quartz, let's face it. If you have clear quartz at home, go ahead and cleanse it using the many different methods that we talked about today. Design your own method that really feels authentic to you and that you believe in, that you can set an intention that really means something. And cleanse your clear quartz, and now decide what's the program for you going forward. How are you going to spend your time? How are you going to interact with others? What are you going to be thinking about? What are you going to do to get clarity in your mind? Whatever you want to program your clear quartz to help you to achieve, I think this is a perfect weekend to go for that and work on it. Now, looking at some of the other stones that come up here, this is really interesting. The black obsidian comes up as a 2. And so 2s, balance, duality, partnership, those kind of things. Having black obsidian is the only 2 that shows up, I think, is very fascinating, because it's really talking about, needing balance, that now maybe we have this chance for balance where we can deal with, the turbulence that we've seen, going on around the world. Yeah, I'm an American. Yeah, it's a big day today because we had an election. And yeah, that's a whole other kind of turbulence. But we're in the middle of a worldwide pandemic that's had so many effects on people. There's been a lot of turbulence because of that. There's been a lot of sadness. There's been a lot of loss. There's been a lot of fear. Obsidian is a wonderful stone to help us release all of that, because it doesn't serve us. It doesn't serve us to stay in that sadness. It doesn't serve us to stay in that fear. The turbulence doesn't really serve us at all, not anymore. Because I feel like, turbulence is great every once in a while because it can shake things up and you can have realignments that, bring progress. But after a while, if you're just staying with it, at least energetically, at least emotionally, it can just, it can wreak havoc on your health. It can wreak havoc on your minds and your mind and your feelings. And black obsidian is a wonderful stone to help, let all of that go. Let all of that go. Start programming your future and look at the structure that you have in place. Look at the things that bring stability to you. And, I think that's a beautiful message for today and going into this weekend. And, going through the other stones that just came up in our reading here, 6. That's a stone. It's so one of my favorites. I know it's a favorite of a lot of people. But amethyst is a stone of the mind. And again, another one great for calming and clarity and, especially when, it comes from anxiety and confusion. And it's a universal healing stone. And a sixth amethyst is all about healing, all about harmony, and it's just a wonderful omen. So I feel like, most of the stones that are coming up here are really hopeful signs that, we can really have every reason to feel that hope that we saw in our stars card today for our card of the day from the Madame Endor's fortune cards. And really know that, yes, there's a reward after this long, arduous journey that we've all been on. Whether you're in the United States and it was all about politics to you, or just being a citizen of the world and looking at what's happening around the globe and being so tired and worn out from this incredible fight that we've all been going through to try to stem this global pandemic and not get sick ourselves or recover as best we can if we do, and all the worry and concern and everything. There's hope, I'm telling you, at the end of the tunnel. I absolutely 100% believe that. I feel we are going to be healed as a nation, as a planet. I feel like we're on the healing path. And I think that the only thing that is going to be an obstacle for us is achieving a sense of clarity and understanding and focusing. Where do we put our focus? And I want everybody to kind of think about that over the weekend. Where should I put my focus? What can I do to contribute to contribute to that healing? Whether it's just in our own communities, whether it's just in our home, whether it's just within ourselves. I hope that you enjoy, that reading. The last two stones that I'll mention here, and you might think, why is she saying so much? Is because every time I do crystal dice readings, I actually roll 7 different dice. And the last two are really interesting. Tiger Eye came up as a 1 stone. Ones are about initiative and new beginnings and taking those first steps, right? Also points to the month of January, right, as a 1 stone. But the fact that Tiger Eye came up as a 1, it's saying like, okay, initiate working on, again, balance, work on practicality, work on that sense of confidence that you have, your own self-confidence, confidence in yourself. I'm not saying you have to have confidence in politicians or celebrities or anything like that, but we all need to be somewhat confident in ourselves, right? And the Tiger Eye is associated with the lower 3 chakras. So Tiger Eye is a great stone to work with on that. But when, we're being drawn to the lower 3 chakras in a reading, it's saying, like, again, where is your sense of empowerment at? Where is your sense of security and groundedness at? And, where is your vitality? So, whatever we can do to feel vital again, to feel empowered again, and to feel secure in our life, secure in who we are. And I think that's what Tiger Eye is talking about. And saying, as a 1 stone for a lot of people, it's like it's time to take the first step towards that. And then the last stone, I feel like I kind of am saving the best for last here, is one of my favorites, Green Aventurine, and it came up as a 3. And that's about teamwork. It's about networking. It's about connecting and creativity and nurturing. Green Aventurine, beautiful green heart chakra stone, helps cleanse our negativity, improve our clarity again. Clarity keeps coming, growth. And nurturing. Nurturing in a huge, huge way. Threes are about nurturing. Green Aventurine is about nurturing as well. So there you go. That's the crystal reading for all of us for this weekend. Whatever resonated with you is what you're supposed to pay attention to. And let's see here. We're almost at the end of the show here. I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything on the chat post. Scrolling. Oh, and one little last. Okay, so we do have oh my gosh, I missed a bunch of comments. I don't know. I guess I needed to refresh my page. Okay, so hi, Sharona. I'm losing my voice. Hi, Dax. How Renee Rose. Hi, Charlotte. And Renee Rose has a question here. She says, have you attributed a crystal per each major arcana card, or do you have a recommended list or tarot deck by someone you feel is quite reliable as to crystal energy and tarot? Oh, wait, and then she also replied something. If so, which stone have you attributed to the Magician, the Wheel of Fortune, the World, and the Fool? Okay. Let's look at the Magician. Okay, I have done that. Do I actually use it all the time? Use it all the time. But, and I've seen a lot of different lists that do that. I think the earliest one that I saw was, I want to say Scott Cunningham had attributed crystals to all the major arcana cards. And I love Scott Cunningham because he's another one of those who was just, gone way too soon. But let me see, what did I, okay, yeah, so in the list I have, I really do think my list is from Scott Cunningham, but you asked in particular about the Magician, the Wheel of Fortune, the World, and the Fool cards. So the Magician card I have associated with, and I think of that because it's the one stone that you can do anything with. You can use it on any chakra. You can program it, whatever you want to program it with. And I think of the Magician as someone who has all the tools, all the resources they need. And so I think if there's one stone that really embodies that concept of the Magician card in the major arcana, I do think it is clear quartz. So that's your Magician. Then you asked about the Fool. And for the Fool, I had green tourmaline. And I trying to remember why that spoke to me so much. I think part of it was this idea of like openness and joy. Having that, green tourmaline to me is a wonderful heart chakra stone. So that idea of the heart being open and joyful sometimes is how, outside of readings where I'm answering a question and the Fool comes up, right? Just the Fool card on its own to me is such a joyful energy, and that's how I see green tourmaline. But I think that might have been one of Scott Cunningham's associations. There's a lot of books out there, Renee, that have associated different crystals. There's even tarot decks that associate different crystals. Obviously, crystal tarot decks tend to do that. And I'm just looking in here to see. So you go, okay, so, but some of them are interesting, like the Crystal Power Tarot, which is like my favorite crystal tarot deck, associates the Fool with clear quartz, amethyst, sugar light, green aventurine, carnelian, and red jasper. So there's 7 different stones. And it's one of those decks that will do like kind of multiple stone associations with tarot cards. And And look, I don't really have a problem with that at all, because it's like it's like a lot of correspondences. We're adding one system to another system, you know. So that doesn't mean that there's only one right answer. People do that in different ways. Now, back to, we covered the Fool, we covered the Magician, so the Wheel of Fortune in the world. So the Wheel of Fortune for me, I associate with jade, because I think of jade as lucky. I think of the Wheel of Fortune oftentimes as luck. And, you know, it's just I don't know, it just seems like the perfect stone to me to associate with the wheel. And then the World card was the last one you asked about. And for the World card, I've associated turquoise. Because I think that, you know, that idea of attainment, completion even, integration, to me that does speak to turquoise. And the reason, for me at least, has to do with, a little bit with the history of turquoise, sure, but also just, how much it's valued. And when we talk about stones being valued, we a lot of people immediately think of, diamonds. Diamonds are really valuable, or this stone or that stone is a really valuable stone, But to me, turquoise has been one that it always catches my eye. I always value it, and I can really harmonize different things like masculine and feminine energies. I think it can help bring opposites together. So that idea of like having that full circle of the world card. And then again, I live in the Southwest, so we have the Turquoise Trail. I have friends that I love going to stone, crystal shops and stone shops with, but, that are so brilliant at picking out what the good turquoise is, and there's all these different levels of how they rate, this is a good turquoise, that's a medium turquoise. And I just think like, wow, it's such a fascinating stone in that way. People value it so much. So that's the answer to your question. And again, I came up with those associations literally, I don't know, at least 10 years ago. I feel like at the time, I think I was, and I really am still into Scott Cunningham's writings. I feel like that's where I got a lot of the ideas from, or at least, some of them, I would write them down and then kind of work with those stones and see, like, am I really feeling it, to make those associations with different tarot cards. And I think you should do the same, Rini. I feel like don't buy everybody else's correspondences, because I think it's so much more meaningful when you find the correspondences yourself. When you experience it, where you're like, oh, wow, I see the relation between this and that. This totally reminds me of this card or that card. That really matters more than all the different lists out there. But there are tons of different lists out there, different decks associating different stones. Again, my favorite deck that does that is the Crystal Power Tarot card. I feel like, and I might be wrong about this, but I think that Janet Boyer wrote a really, pretty thorough book on correspondences with tarot. I feel like it's her Naked Tarot book. I could be wrong about which title it is, but I know she spent so much time, because we talked about it, the correspondences with crystals and tarot cards, and I know she included that along with, I think, like essential oils, herbs, I think everything under the sun. If it was written, I'm pretty sure that Janet, if it could be a correspondence, I feel like she included it in her book. And again, I think that is the Naked Tarot book. All right, so I hope that answered your question, Rini. And, I have time to take one call before we go real quick. I feel bad, we didn't get to too many callers here. But let's go ahead and see who's been waiting the longest and see if they want to talk about Topaz, cleansing crystals, or if they just want a free mini reading. Oops. They just fell off the thing. It's weird. That's like 3 or 4 times off the switchboard that it's like I'm about to take a call and it's gone. But anyways, it's a bizarre day. A lot of energy floating around, right? And again, go back and listen to this in the archive. Listen to that reading and see if any of it resonates with you, if any of the stones I mentioned resonates with you, or the numbers, or some of the advice, because it was a reading for all of us who are listening to the show and listening later in archive. But in any event, for me today, for this week, I will see you next Saturday on the Tarot Today show with my co-host Dax Carlisle. I hope you all have a wonderful weekend and keep on rocking, people. Bye-bye.